In the heart of East Africa, the land of Mount Kilimanjaro trembles, not from nature's wrath, but from the roar of its people. Tanzania, a nation once known for calm politics and steady hands, is now burning with anger, disbelief, and defiance. October 2025. The air is thick with tension. The people have waited in long lines, hearts heavy with hope, eyes lifted toward change. But what came next was a result that shook the nation to its core. The Electoral Commission declared President Samia Suluhu Hassan victorious, with a staggering 96% of the vote in several regions. 96. A number so high it felt unreal. A number that, to many Tanzanians, did not reflect the will of the people, but the will of the powerful. And so, like fire catching dry grass, disbelief turned into outrage. Outrage turned into movement, and movement turned into revolt. The ruling party, CCM, stood tall, but the people stood taller. Across Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, Arusha, Mwanza, Tanga, and Mbeya, whispers became chants. Justice for all. We want true freedom. Opposition leaders had warned. They had cried foul long before the results were announced. Key figures like Tundu Lissu and Luhaga Mpina had been barred, arrested, or silenced. The streets echoed with a familiar story. The story of African democracy twisted by power and fear. The results were more than numbers. They were a mirror, showing the cracks in a system that had long been dressed in the colors of stability. In one clip, we see polling stations overturned, ballot boxes scattered and burning. In another, crowds flood the streets, waving flags, fists raised, demanding answers. The chants grow louder, the youth lead the charge, the women sing songs of resistance, and the elders stand at the corners, shaking their heads, saying, "We've seen this before, but this time it feels different." This is not just an election, it is a reckoning. For years, Tanzania has been a symbol of peace in a troubled region. But peace without justice is silence dressed in calm. And now, that silence has been broken. From the coastlines of Zanzibar to the dusty streets of Dodoma, the nation watches a leader rise, not by the voice of her people, but by the power of her office. The world, too, watches. But the headlines are cautious. The diplomats are silent. And the international observers, they write reports instead of speaking truth. In the villages, men whisper around fires. In the cities, crowds gather despite the tear gas and the guns. A mother looks at her son, blood on his shirt, stone in his hand, and asks, "Is this the freedom we voted for?" Tanzania stands at a crossroad. On one side, fear. On the other, freedom. And for the first time in a long time, the people seem ready to choose the harder path. The morning after the results, Tanzania changed forever. The streets of Dar es Salaam were no longer quiet. They were rivers of anger, flooded by youth who had lost faith in the ballot. Banners rose, tires burned, police sirens screamed, videos began to surface, polling stations torched, ballot boxes shattered, security forces chasing protesters through smoke-filled streets. The people had had enough of oppression, enough of manipulation, enough of being told to wait for stability while their voices were buried under statistics. From the city to the countryside, one phrase echoed like thunder: "We will not be silenced again." Tanzania's youth, the digital generation, had long felt invisible. Many were unemployed, unheard, and tired of the old political order. To them, this wasn't just an election, it was a test of dignity. And so, they marched, they sang, they fought back. But soon the government responded, not with dialogue, but with force. Riot police descended on protesters. Tear gas filled the air. Rubber bullets turned peaceful marches into chaos. Still, the people refused to retreat. The capital was tense. In Mwanza, entire roads were blocked by burning debris. In Arusha, churches and mosques opened their doors to hide the wounded. The nation was on edge. International media began to pick it up, but the coverage was brief, controlled, sanitized. Tanzania faces post-election tension, they said. But to those living it, it was not tension. It was survival. The youth were not fighting politicians. They were fighting a system that made them powerless. And when power meets powerlessness, sparks ignite revolutions. On October 29th, as the protests reached their peak, Tanzania vanished from the digital map. The government shut down the internet. No social media, no news, no voices, a nation silenced in real time. This wasn't the first time an African government had pulled the plug. But this blackout felt different. It was strategic, deliberate, and meant to erase the moment. WhatsApp messages stopped loading. X feeds froze. Even journalists inside the country couldn't upload reports. The message was clear. If the people will not be silent, the state will make them silent. But even in silence, the truth found its way out. VPNs, offline recordings, and word of mouth kept the resistance alive. In the shadows of censorship, the revolution adapted. When the government blocked the screen, the people took to the streets. When they cut off voices, songs of protest filled the air. The blackout was meant to blind, but instead, it awakened. For hours, the world had no idea what was happening inside Tanzania. Rumors spread of mass arrests, of injured protesters, of soldiers patrolling polling centers. Yet amid fear, something powerful was reborn. Unity. Christian, Muslim, rural, urban, all stood under one cry: Tanzania deserves better. When truth is blocked, resistance becomes the language of freedom. And that language was now fluent across the nation. From Dar es Salaam to Zanzibar, the blackout couldn't hide the fire of awakening. When the world finally noticed, it was too late. The videos that leaked told a story too strong to deny. Streets burning, youth bleeding, soldiers patrolling neighborhoods. But the reaction was weak. Foreign governments issued concern statements. NGOs called for restraint. The African Union promised to observe developments closely. Yet none of them could feel what Tanzania felt: betrayal. The people had believed democracy meant choice, but now they saw the truth. In Africa, elections are not always chosen by the people, but by power. A continent that cries for freedom must now learn to defend it. International media asked, "Is Tanzania's democracy dying?" But inside the country, people weren't asking questions anymore. They were acting. The world looked away, but Africa watched closely. From Kenya to Nigeria, from Ghana to Burkina Faso, young Africans whispered, "If it can happen in Tanzania, it can happen anywhere." The struggle for democracy in Africa is no longer local, it's continental. And Tanzania's fire lit the match. Days passed. The government claimed victory. The people claimed betrayal. And between them stood a truth no one could bury, that Africa's youth are done watching their future be stolen in silence. Tanzania stands at a turning point. It can choose fear, the comfort of quiet submission. Or it can choose courage, the path of painful but powerful change. Every revolution starts with disbelief. Every freedom begins with a voice that refuses to die. And now, that voice echoes across Tanzania. No matter how long the blackout lasts, morning will come. No matter how strong the silence, truth will whisper again. And when it does, the world will remember that in October 2025, the people of Tanzania rose, not for power, not for politics, but for their right to be heard. Africa is waking up, and this time the silence will not return. Subscribe for more.